Imagine bleeding every month with no pads, no tampons, no underwear, and if anyone noticed, your reputation could be destroyed. This isn't fiction. This was real life for women in the Middle Ages. The romanticized castles and chivalrous knights we see in movies hide a much harsher, more intimate reality that women faced every single day. The truth is, their lives were governed by a biological reality that society chose to ignore, punish, and force into silence. Today, we read pulling back the curtain on one of history's most unspoken topics, what it was really like to have a period in the Middle Ages. Let's start with the shocker. For centuries, most medieval women wore nothing under their dresses. No underwear, no protection, just a long linen shift and layers of fabric. This wasn't a choice driven by comfort or preference. It was a matter of survival. Fabric was incredibly expensive and time-consuming to produce. Every thread was spun by hand, every yard woven on a loom. A simple pair of undergarments would have been a luxury few could afford. Furthermore, washing clothes was a brutal, physically demanding chore. Without modern plumbing or detergents, laundry meant hauling water from a well or river, scrubbing with harsh lye soap if you were lucky, and beating the clothes against rocks to get them clean. In a world where your daily energy was spent on farming, cooking, and simply staying alive, underwear just wasn't a priority. So, for most women, there was nothing between their body and the world but a single layer of linen. So, what happened when a woman's cycle began? There was no warning system, no calendar apps to track cycles, no gentle reminders, and certainly no privacy. In small, often single-room homes shared with the entire family, a woman had to act fast the moment she felt the first sign. The most common solution was a strip of cloth, a piece of linen or wool folded into a pad. This makeshift sanitary napkin, often called a clout or rag, would be held in place either by tucking it between the legs or sometimes by tying it to a belt worn around the waist. And once it was used, it had to be washed again and again. These same pieces of cloth would be rinsed, dried, and reused for months or even years until they literally fell apart. The process was discreet and relentless. A woman's monthly routine was a hidden cycle of washing, drying, and reusing, all while trying to maintain her dignity and go about her daily chores as if nothing was different. It was a constant, secret battle fought with a few meager scraps of fabric. But this cycle of reuse came with a risk that no one talks about. The hygiene standards of the Middle Ages were, by our standards, water from wells and rivers was often contaminated with human and animal waste. Soap, as we know it, was a rare luxury, often made from caustic materials like ash and animal fat. Boiling cloth to truly sterilize it required a huge amount of firewood and a large pot, resources that many poor families simply didn't have. This raises a grim possibility. Some historians believe that the constant reuse of unsanitized or poorly washed cloths could have led to a high rate of infections, skin irritation, and other health problems. Imagine the discomfort and the danger. On the other hand, some scholars argue that women's bodies may have been more resilient, or that they developed methods of cleaning that were more effective than we assume. We can't know for sure, but one thing is certain. Comfort did not exist. This was a solution born of pure necessity, not of well-being. Faced with this reality, some women tried desperate solutions to manage their periods. It was a matter of personal engineering, with each woman trying to figure out what worked for her body and her resources. Some would pack the cloth tighter, hoping to increase its absorbency, even if it was uncomfortable. Others might use multiple layers, creating a bulky and awkward pad that was difficult to conceal. Insomniarious women might have used moss, a naturally absorbent material, though evidence for this is sparse and debated. These weren't perfect solutions. They were often painful, chafing, and still carried the risk of leakage and infection. But when the alternative was public humiliation or visible stain that could lead to gossip, shame, and a ruined reputation, did whatever you had to do to survive the week. Have you ever wondered why so many paintings from the medieval and Renaissance periods show women in dark, rich colors, especially deep reds? There's a reason red and dark dresses were everywhere, and it wasn't just fashion. It was camouflage. Red, ironically, was one of the best colors to hide blood. A dark crimson or a deep burgundy gown wouldn't betray a woman if an accident happened. Similarly, patterned fabrics could help distract the eye, and the sheer volume of heavy skirts could help absorb any leaks before they became visible. In a world that judged women so harshly for a natural bodily function, clothing became a form of armor. It was a shield, a practical tool for preserving one's honor in a society that offered little compassion. In some parts of medieval society, the stigma around menstruation went far beyond simple hygiene. It was feared, influenced by ancient texts and religious interpretations. Many believed menstrual blood was dangerous, unclean, and even corrupting. This led to a set of rules and taboos that isolated women during their cycle. In some communities, a menstruating woman was forbidden from entering a church, touching religious icons, or even preparing food for fear that she would spoil it. She might be sent to a separate hut or confined to a specific part of the house, effectively banished from her own family. This wasn't a universal practice across all of Europe, but where it did happen, the psychological impact was devastating. It taught women from a young age that a natural part of their existence was something to be hidden and ashamed of. Now, let's zoom out and consider the overall physical toll on a medieval woman's body. Life was incredibly hard. They often experienced constant pregnancies from a young age, with little time for their bodies to recover in between. Their diets were often poor, lacking in essential nutrients like iron. This, combined with regular blood loss from menstruation, would have led to chronic anemia, weakness, and fatigue. Add to that the back-breaking physical labor of running a household, and you have a recipe for complete exhaustion. Some historical records and skeletal analysis suggest that many women entered menopause shockingly early, sometimes before the age of 30. This wasn't because they were inherently weaker. It was because their bodies were pushed far beyond their absolute limits, day after day, year after year. So how did anyone learn to deal with all of this? There were no manuals, no health classes. Men certainly didn't discuss it. The church, while obsessed with purity, offered no practical guidance. This crucial knowledge was passed down in secret through a quiet, informal network of women. A mother would teach her daughter. An older sister would show a younger one. A neighbor might offer advice. This information was shared in whispers, away from the ears of men. It was a hidden curriculum of womanhood. But if you were an orphan, or isolated, or for whatever reason didn't have another woman to teach you, you learned the hard way, alone, scared, and trying to figure it all out by yourself. The change, when it finally came, wasn't a single event. It was a slow, gradual revolution that no one celebrated. Over centuries, things began to improve. Better and cheaper soap became more available. Cities began to develop more sophisticated water and sanitation systems. The Industrial Revolution made textiles cheaper and more accessible. And eventually, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, companies began to manufacture the first commercial sanitary products. For the first time in history, women were given tools specifically designed for their body. What we consider completely normal today, the simple act of buying a box of pads or tampons, was once an unimaginable luxury. It represented a freedom from a silent, monthly struggle that had defined women's lives for millennia. So the next time history calls the Middle Ages romantic, remember what women endured in silence. The story of their resilience is written not in grand histories, but in the faded, reused scraps of linen, in the whispered advice from mother to daughter, and in the quiet strength it took to face the world every single day. Which part of this history shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.